Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of Scurry and the Scrub. I don't know why my Zoom keeps talking to me all of a sudden. Like the first 10, 15 episodes, it didn't talk to me. Now it talks to me all the time. Today, we're doing our conference finals preview. So we've got Jacob Padilla, who cut his teeth covering the Suns. And we got Cole Huff, who is currently covering the Clippers. So we're going to kind of get like a little tussle going between them and see who comes out as the NBA Suns Clippers expert here. But we were just talking off camera first about the Suns in 4 guy. So if you guys haven't caught up on this, like at Nuggets, I think it was game 3, right? In Denver. Yeah. Game 3 in Denver with those fans fighting or whatever. And the dude in the Nash jersey grabbed the dude in the Jamal Murray jersey, like hockey fight style, ripped the jersey over his head, uppercutted him like 6 times. Told his boy that he was whipping his ass and then called out Suns in 4, and then they swept. And then D-Book gave him an autographed jersey and tickets to the conference finals. Is that right?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Okay, so what we were about to talk about is we were setting off a ripple effect of Devin Booker inadvertently encouraging Suns fans to whip Clippers fans' asses, right? So that's what we're dealing with right now. Is that the situation?
So I think kind of the full video showed that it was kind of self-defense with that guy in particular. Like the Nuggets guys were coming at him, and
for sure,
just kind of ended it. So, and I think that's kind of because Devin just kind of reached out and kind of, I think, looked into it, and then kind of was like, hey, this dude kind of going into the enemy territory and holding his own, and it's like, all right, let's reward this guy for repping the Suns or whatever. But again, now we're seeing kind of copycats. It did inadvertently encourage poor behavior, because we already saw another fight video after this last game where the tag was Suns in 4, so now that's apparently rallying cry, and and the Suns had to put out a statement today that discouraging that kind of fan behavior. So it's I was kind of hesitant to go all in. Obviously, they're selling all the shirts and people were hyping it up or whatever. I just kind of let it go. I wasn't really getting too much involved with it. Because
I will say this: I'd rather have the fans whipping each other's asses than throwing stuff at players. So there was a minute where they were getting a little crazy, with the players. I'd rather have them fighting each other than the players. You know what I mean?
Oh, definitely, 100%. And if you're going to do something, at least fight each other as opposed to anything involving throwing things on the court or anything else. So if you're going to be stupid and kind of contain it within yourself. So
I think it's a lot smarter to fight a guy in a Jamal Murray jersey than to actually fight Jamal Murray.
Exactly.
So yeah, I'll support that.
Yeah, because you don't even Kawhi trains like martial arts, right?
Kawhi. There's a reason no one tried to fight Kawhi.
Yeah, so if you go down to the arena, Kawhi probably looks takeable from section 220, but if you got down to the floor, Kawhi's whipping every part of you.
You see those hands? There's I have not thrown no thank you.
Yeah.
One punch and I'd be out. So
he would have to open hand slaps from Kawhi are concussive blows. That's not even see.
Even the professional athletes that probably have never fought before can't really fight. I'm 99% sure if they hit you one good time with how much they train, how strong they are, it's really not even fair. They can really do some damage. So yes, let's leave it fans to fans. Preferably fans just watch the game and enjoy it.
But,
please.
I mean, I guess if they're going to take it there, then better with amongst themselves and with the players and stuff.
I mean, a little bit of trash talk is always a little bit of fun. Just try not to cross any lines and encourage mass violence.
Right, especially because there's probably kids there and stuff too.
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, the funny part was that it was an avalanche of L's for Denver, because it was dude was in a Murray jersey who's not playing because he's got a torn ACL. The Denver was getting just railed by Phoenix, and then the Phoenix dude won the fight, and then he called the series before it was over.
That's the best part. It actually was Suns of 4.
Yeah, because
that was the funny part. It was L, just a wave of L's being handed to Denver, and it's that's rough. So.
But back to your Devin Booker point, I think the only reason it was okay for Devin Booker to come out in support of the Suns and 4 guy was because it was self-defense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Because the Nuggets fan poured beer on him.
Right.
Like, if you pour beer on me, we're fighting. Like, that's just point blank, period. So
Right.
I get it. And, like, I bet Devin Booker, somebody on his team was just like, nah, it was self-defense. You can go ahead and message this dude. So
And it's not like he's like
Fucking
pounding this guy into the ground. He like ended the fight and the dude walked away and he's like, all right, and it's over.
no, both of them are trying to be famous on it. I actually just watched the video today of the
did
guy
too.
who got you saw that? The
Yeah.
guy who got
I didn't
Dude,
see
that's
it.
not-
and he was like, oh, he just scratched my nose. None of those punches connected.
No, dude.
Stop it.
Dude,
Stop it.
that is not the move, dude. Like
Stop it.
you should not want to be made famous off of this. Like
Yeah.
you want to disappear after that.
He was like, yeah, he grabbed my chains. He's showing his chains in the video. I'm like, no
Mhm.
one cares, bro. Like, you got robbed.
And they like zoom out, and the jersey's too small, so his pants are hanging too low. So it's like, dude,
Oh, yeah.
you're
He's
not
wearing like
you're-
shorts
yeah.
under his jeans, like
Yeah.
back in 2005.
I
was
know.
like, oh, yeah, this
Dude,
is not a
okay,
good
so
look.
raise your hand if you used to live like that, where it was like you're always ready for a basketball
Oh,
game to break out.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
for sure.
Oh,
Shorts.
but that was-
It was uncomfortable in the summer, but you always knew a basketball game was going to break out somewhere.
Those were
I just
those were
never wear
basically
jeans.
boxers.
Yeah,
yeah.
I just always wear basketball shorts. I never wear jeans. So.
that's okay. That's like
Yeah.
supremely ready right there. You're just like you're always looking for a basketball game is what's happening there.
Yeah, that's the Nebraska thing. Dudes in Nebraska just they're not phased by the cold, so they
You
just
got,
wear
you
shorts
got a
all
mouthpiece in
day.
your back pocket too.
That's right.
He's ready to go. Ready to go.
All right, so let's get into. Well, first of all, we got to talk about the teams that are no longer with us. Like, so we got to give them whatever they need. Like, we were watching Philly and the Sixers, or the Sixers in Atlanta last night, right? So there's nothing good coming out of this from Philly's perspective, right? If you're looking for a like they're close to contending type of stuff, like that was a series they should have, if they were even close, they should have walked over Atlanta, right? They blew the big leads. They lost Game 7 at home. Embiid had 8 turnovers, I think, in both Game 5 and Game 7 in the losses. Ben Simmons doesn't want to dunk. Like, they've got problems, right? They have one legitimate, like, shooting option, essentially, right? And they tried desperately to find him at all times. But down the stretch, Atlanta just face
Are we
guarded.
dismissing Tobias as legitimate?
Would you call him a shooter or just like a
I was like, he's a
scorer?
scoring option.
Yeah,
He's a scoring option.
yeah, that's
Okay.
right.
Here's
I
my
agree.
thing about Tobias, though. Philly should not have given him all that money. Like, Philly gave him A-star money, thinking he was going to be a like in the moment guy late in the playoff games. Like,
Mhm.
and I never thought he was that guy. To me, Tobias has always been like 20-8 guy. Like maybe like that's just him. And like if he scores 30, it's like wow. But like you can't count on him to score 30. You can just count on him for his 20-8, maybe. And that's maybe.
Yeah. And they kind of got themselves like trapped in that because one, he did have the best season of his career with the Clippers, and coming off that, you're like, all right, man, this dude is legit. And then they made the move for him, and then they didn't really have a better option.
Yeah.
And because he does, like, you need certain guys when you're starting with Embiid and Simmons as your core pieces, and he's a guy that can shoot. He's probably not as consistent as you'd like, but the jump shot is kind of the biggest part of his game. And then he'll do a little bit of attacking the closeouts and finishing transition, all that stuff off of that. But it starts with the jump shot with him. And that's the kind of guy that you need with them. The problem is, you had to pay him that much money to keep him, and there wasn't really a better option. So they kind of got themselves locked into that trio of Simmons, Harris, and Embiid.
Yeah, I'm curious what happens with Ben, because he's gone the wrong direction in the shooting department. You know, he wasn't a shooter coming out of college, but even when he first started, he was still shooting the ball. You could just see he wasn't that good at it. But now he just like his confidence is shot along with
It's mental. It's mental now.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's such a weird just like career trajectory, and
Mhm.
it's kind of an indictment on the Clippers, the whole organization there, the Philly organization, and their player development, and Embiid, throwing all kinds of wrong names, and himself, Simmons, the people around him. He doesn't have to be a 40% 3-point shooter to be a great player. He was a great player this season,
Right.
and I think we kind of this postseason, the meltdown, just kind of the complete loss of confidence. We can't let that kind of hide the fact that what he did during the regular season to help them get the 1 seed. He's still an incredible defender. He's still an incredible transition player. He's a really valuable NBA player. It's just, for whatever reason, things got into his head and he just was afraid to shoot the ball. The free throw thing was just bizarre for a guy that's 61-ish, like for his career, shooting 30%, like the worst ever. Like that is just bizarre.
I think he was 47% in the conference semis or whatever against Atlanta. It was the worst free throw shooting percentage in NBA history on that amount of attempts, at least. Like, crazy. Like,
I think in the 30s for the whole postseason.
Yeah.
Do you think, like, Cole, this is probably a better question for you. Like, do you think he can, because I was having this question with an old coach today, former coach, and he was saying, do you think, like, Ben Simmons can even, like, now even try to incorporate his young
You cut out a little.
whatever happens next season, if he starts to shoot, like, is it recoverable? Is his jump shot, like, could he come along with his jump shot next season, or is it to a point now where it's just like, this is who he is?
Well, the thing is, we don't know what his jump shot looks like, so I can't even
But that's my
say
thing.
if he's going to get
Do you
better or
think
not,
he even
but he
has
can
the
shoot it.
confidence next year to shoot?
I think you have to. I mean, how can you play basketball at this level on a contending team with a max contract and not, like,
Well,
there's only, like, also we thought that, how can you go 3 full games or fourth quarters without attempting a shot, but then he does it again in the fourth. So I don't know. I would think that at this point of his career, especially after the way that this season ended and all this criticism on him, that he's going to at least try next year. And if it's just a bad jumper and it doesn't work, he'll probably lose confidence further and might just completely abandon it. But I don't think there's a way that he can not even try to fix the problem next year. You know what I mean? Especially if he's with Philly next year still. Like, that's not going to fly.
Oh, and that's what, like, the like exit interviews going on right now. Like Doc Rivers said, like, that he's committed to working on the jump shot. And I just saw that he's not going to play for Australia to spend time working on the skill development. So that seems to be at least some level of commitment to trying to make a change there. And the thing is, I think we kind of boil this thing down too much. I don't think it's simply a matter of him shooting the ball. There are a lot of NBA players that aren't great jump shooters that don't succeed because of their jump shot. You can find other ways to be impactful. And I think one with him, the free throws, that's where I think you need to start first. Like, get that free throw to a respectable level to where you don't have to be afraid to get to the free throw line. Because that was as much as anything. It's not just the fact that he can't shoot a jump shot. It's the fact that he's afraid of contact and being sent to the free throw line in the fourth quarter. So he wasn't even involving himself in the offense and giving himself a chance to score. Yeah. Like, he's a guy, like, this dude, you can get him downhill. You can do a lot of things with him on offense without him being a threat to shoot it from the 3-point line. But part of that too is, I think Philly needs to kind of rework that roster and his role a little bit. I don't think he can be the full-time point guard. Like, you've got to use him in a different way. You can still have stretches where he's running the offense and everything, but he can still be an effective player with his limitations in a different role, I think. But I don't know if Philly's got the personnel to make that happen.
Aren't his skills, I'm not saying he's LeBron, but his skill set matches what, like, a young LeBron had. So when GMs were trying to build a championship roster around LeBron, they just stuck shooters around him. Like, Philly doesn't have that. Philly's got a bunch of Ben Simmonses running around there. Like, Embiid is a freak, so, like, he's different. But Curry can shoot, and then who's coming off screens where Ben can hit them in stride and let them go up? Like, who's doing that?
It's almost like the
creativity part of it, and not enough on the team.
It's like the Giannis argument, right? We kind of talk about that. I mean, you compare him to, like, a younger LeBron, but, like, Giannis can't shoot. Giannis has a lot of the same. I mean, he's a little bit taller and longer and stuff, but they have the same physical attributes, and they have the same style of play where everything is mostly downhill. They probably handle the ball a little bit more than they should, and you would like to see someone of that stature and of that, build quality would be a little bit closer to the basket, whether it's, ducking in on mismatches or on smaller guards, or a little bit more cutting, whatever, running just some different actions to him. But I think him always starting the play on the perimeter and trying to be the point guard, so to say, should probably be limited a little bit, just because he's so good in other areas of the game. And I think that I don't know what type of physical conditioning he's in, but I think that wears on him probably mentally and physically as well. Just having to do so much of the offense if they're not throwing the ball to Embiid, because they don't have JJ Redick anymore. They don't have Ersan Ilyasova or whoever they had, Dario Saric. They don't have those guys to stretch the floor. So, I mean, I can't put it all on one person or the other. A lot of it is on him because he's out there playing, but the coaching staff needs to figure out how to get him in better positions as well. That's my thoughts on that.
I swear, I think the first possession of their playoff run started with him getting a post up on a guard, and he just went up and scored easily on him.
And then did you ever see it again?
No, I know that's what I'm saying, right? Yeah,
right.
A little back to it was a booty ball ISO, and he scored easily. And then they didn't. I don't even think I saw it anymore. That was the only time. I was why aren't you? If that's your first play of your playoff run, that should be a staple, I think.
That means you're committed to going to that. If you're doing it the first play of the game, you're all right, we're gonna establish this going forward. So. Right.
That's why it was so weird. It was okay, you got that going. I don't even remember who they played in the first round now. I forgot who they play.
Washington.
Yeah, Washington. It's you beat up on a team that won their way in, essentially. That wasn't even a top 8 seed. And you're why aren't you doing that to people? Yeah. Are you telling me there's no one on Atlanta you can exploit that way with Ben? With who, if you get Trey matched up on him, you tell me Ben Simmons can't take Trey down there and do that exact same thing all day?
He did it to Gallinari at the end of the game, just didn't shoot
it. Yeah. It's come on, you gotta put your people in the right spots there. So that's Doc's the one that the headlines right now are Doc's quote about him not being sure if Ben Simmons can be a point guard on a championship team, and everybody's kind of picking that one apart, right? But some of this is on Doc too. Because if we're talking about Simmons' body of work, Doc Rivers has quite a body of work that's not complimentary for his playoff stature either. He's got the ring in 08 with Boston. That's doing a lot of heavy lifting for his resume, because there's a whole bunch of flameouts around that. You know what I mean?
I looked it up today, and in closeout games, playing more, I think it's more than 8 closeout games as a coach, coaching in them. Mm-hmm. Doc has a 30% win percentage, which is the lowest all time.
Yeah, I follow a lot of Clippers people, and so I'm very aware of just kind of Clippers fans' thoughts on Doc and the way he handled his rotations and game plans and everything down the stretch of last year. So
you wouldn't put Montrezl Harrell on Jokic single coverage for the last 3 games of the series.
Yeah, but I think Cole's right though. As much as it's on Ben from a skill set standpoint and to him to make his game better as he gets older, it's also on the coaching staff to be it was what we said the other night. Remember when they were in that timeout huddle or whatever, and they were blowing that huge lead, and it's we got to establish habits. It's bro, it's June.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? You can't establish habits in June. That has to be embedded in you already. You need June is where you just execute. That's about execution.
Just let's just do what we've been doing.
Yeah, it's about adjustments.
Maybe a minor adjustment.
And big players making big plays. Yeah. So as much as we're talking about Ben's limitations right now and the things that he's got to get better as he enters the prime of his career, it's also on Doc and that coaching staff to put him in the right spots based on his strengths. That's what you got to do. You got to maximize strengths, minimize weaknesses, because you're not going to you don't have a perfect basketball player out there. So you just got to figure out a way to maximize it. How can we put him in a spot where Atlanta can't exploit him and he can exploit Atlanta? That wasn't done the whole series. It's the same thing every day.
Who's having a better time last night? Who's having a better Sunday night? Brett Brown or Josh Smith?
I think probably Brett Brown, right?
Definitely Brett Brown.
Yeah,
gotta be.
Yeah,
I told y'all this process stuff. Like, is the process over now? Like, do you really think they're gonna still try this Simmons and Embiid thing, or are they gonna blow it up?
I would think that Simmons is gone
I
for
see.
the right.
I
person,
see
obviously.
I can't see him playing in the Sixers jersey next year. Like, I can't.
Yeah, especially after like some like the Embiid quote in particular. Like the dot quote is what it is. Like he shouldn't have to be a point guard. Like that was on Philly for setting himself up and telling everybody and him, no, you are our point guard. Like that's on them. They should not have kind of locked him in that box. But the Embiid one, and he was even like hesitant about it. It was like, all right, how do I say this without completely throwing my teammate under the bus? Well, I'm going to say it anyway. That's not a great look. But also like I was saying though, he's still an incredible player. Can you really afford to sell this low on him? What are the offers going to be?
That's the part I get stuck on. Because if they're blowing it up, they're giving away Ben Simmons at his lowest possible value, right?
Yeah.
He's not going to get worse than this. And there are already parts of his game where he's elite.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Just got the number one seed.
It was like what Jacob was saying earlier. If he gets the shooting to like something that's respectable to where a defense has to at least account for it at minimum, you've unlocked a superstar at this point because he can affect the game in different ways. So
yeah, it's not like this is a complete failure. They were the number one seed in the East. It was still a very good team. And you've got Embiid out there playing on a torn meniscus.
Right.
You like, it's not like this team can't win basketball games as currently constructed. They've got weaknesses that have clearly held them back once you get to the postseason. And that's something they need to work on. But does this mean that you have to abandon it entirely? And the entire process was about putting together this core. So you're really kind of bailing after you got to this point. You're like, all right, we're not even going to try to tweak it. We're not even going to try to figure out a different way to do it. Because like we were talking, it's not like they've built a perfect supporting cast around them, and it's the Embiid Simmons combo that is the specific reason for the failure. Obviously, Simmons was a huge part of that with just kind of the meltdown that he had. But I don't know that we can assume that that's exactly who he's going to be every postseason for the rest of his career either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the fact that teams can double and stunt and commit to Embiid when he puts the ball on the floor or even catches it on the extended block area, like the fact that teams can do that on a consistent basis speaks to how the team was built, I think, in my opinion. Because if you have pieces around him, that stuff's easy money all day. You know what I mean?
Well, look at the Suns. Look what happens when teams try to throw a double at Booker.
Yeah.
You just pick them apart right now with their off-ball movement, with spacing the floor, with Mikal Bridges, who's your fourth best player. Like, that's a well-constructed team, and that's what happens. You've got counters to throw at. Philly just didn't really how much of it is they didn't have any, or they didn't know what to go to? Like, were there still things that Doc just wasn't able to figure out that within the roster that they had that they could have done some things differently?
Mm-hmm. Right. And I think that's the part that's on Doc, though, because like you're saying, how long have we been waiting for this team for Simmons and Embiid to be at their best in the playoffs and finally like bring the best out of each other in a setting? And that has a lot to do with the supporting cast, but I think a lot of what the hope was Doc was going to come in and unlock that for this team. And it just hasn't been that. And I don't know how much longer we can wait for these two guys to like be at their peak together for this team to get over some type of hump, because they haven't even gotten over any yet. Like, it's just been the same thing over and over again where they look great on paper, but they never execute when it comes
down. This was their year. They're the number one seed. They got everything going for them, and their path to at least the third round couldn't have been any easier. A playing team, the Wizards, they beat them in 5. They took care of business, but it wasn't really like a lopsided series. Mm-hmm. And then the Atlanta Hawks team, which they've been better than what I think a lot of people thought they would be, but there's no way Philly is supposed to lose this series, right?
Right. No, I agree.
Like, they should at least be a Western or Eastern Conference final out. Like, if they're losing, yeah.
No, but you know what needs to happen though is people need to stop getting rid of Nate McMillan. Like, I think I looked it up last night. I think like this is who's bounced Nate McMillan's teams from the playoffs. Duncan, Nash, Dirk, LeBron, and then the bubble Heat, and then Kyrie and Tatum. So like he's not like getting beat in the playoffs by anybody they got like any business beating in the first place. You know what I'm saying? Like Hall of Famers or really good squads.
Well,
firing that dude's ass. Like he's good at coaching young squads like Atlanta.
Yeah,
that. Stop it.
And coaches get better too, just like players. We're seeing that with Monty Williams right now. Monty in New Orleans looked like a coach with a very clear ceiling, and even some of the things in Phoenix, you kind of felt hesitant a little bit. You're worried, like, all right, is this going to rear its head here once we get to the postseason? But he's done such a good job with this team, and he keeps adjusting. And I think he's learned from where he's failed previously in his career, and he's continued to find ways to improve himself. And I think we're seeing the same thing with McMillan, where he got the rap early on in his career. It's like he's a good coach that can get you to a certain level, but he can't get you over the top. And all it takes is the right mix, a couple good decisions here to kind of break through that ceiling. And that's what we're seeing right now with him in Atlanta.
Atlanta was one of the worst teams in the league. They were headed for like lottery, not even like the play-in stuff. They weren't even in the window for that. And now he's got them in the conference finals. Like, would you be shocked if they get to the NBA finals? I wouldn't. Like, I think there's a way for them.
Not the way the East has gone this year.
Yeah. So like, give that dude his flowers. Finally, stop firing him. Stop like laying him out to dry. Like with these crap. Like Seattle hung him out to dry. That's why he went to Portland. But he you just like he gets this feeling where it's like, this roster isn't going to contend. I'm going to get fired for this. Like, stop it. That dude's a good coach. He should have a job always as long as he wants one, in my opinion. Like, he is established as a good NBA coach who can get the most out of a roster. And I think that's what else do you want out of a coach? I mean, it's a player-driven league, right? You need stars to win. So when you're looking for a head coach, all you want is a guy who can maximize a roster, correct? Am I wrong about
and that's why I think he will have a job, though, because I think, like you're saying, it's a player-driven league, and every player who's ever played for him like raves about him, and all of them play so super, super hard for him. And like you could even tell this year, like with the guys on the Hawks team, you're like, some of these dudes, like even last night, Herter, like, did you expect Herter to like be this good like in the playoffs? Like I could see him getting 30 in like regular season games for sure, but for him to,
he's better than Bogey, low key.
Serious.
I like both those guys. I've been a fan of both those guys.
Okay.
Even back.
I think Bogey's a little banged up, but all right, let's move over to the West real quick and talk about Utah a little bit. Like, Cole, do you think this is more about what the Clippers did or more what Utah didn't do in terms of how that thing shook out those last two games without Kawhi, especially?
It's about like it's a little bit of both, because I don't want to discredit the Clippers with what they overcame, especially on the road in game 5, without Kawhi learning about it that day, or maybe they found out the night before.
I think game 6 was on the road, and then 7, or no, you're right, 5 was on the road.
Yeah, it went 6.
No, you're right. Yeah.
So I don't want to discredit them. Just following them the whole season, though, this is just kind of who they are, which is refreshing coming from previous years, especially like last year. The team would just quit, basically. Like, if they didn't have it in the second quarter, they'd fall behind 15-20, like the game was over, or they give up a big lead if somebody got a little bit of momentum. Like, they were quitters. So it was refreshing to see. This year is a complete opposite. Kawhi being injured, load managed, whatever, everybody in and out, Ibaka being in and out, Patrick Beverley not being here all year. Like, guys have been in and out of the lineup. Like, Terrence Mann caught a bunch of DNPs this year. He hardly played against the Mavericks until the end of the series. Luke Kennard, same thing. Everybody talked about the contract extension he got, making $64 million, and he was catching a lot of DNPs.
Those guys started in the G League this year.
Those guys, like, I mean, I don't want to sound too much like a Clippers just fanatic over here, but like, honestly, I think
you guys on together. It's all good.
I think it's.
No, you gotta keep it real.
Yeah, it's a representation of the leadership change, and I think Ty Lue has a lot to do with that. He's been that way throughout his career, which we'll get to with the Clippers Sun series at some point. But it's like me and a lot of Clippers fans have the complete opposite feeling that we've had in the past, where now we're like, man, we believe in them. Like, who knows? Like, I don't know. Kawhi's out, maybe they'll win. Like, there's optimism. But then the Jazz too. I think that's got to be a coaching thing as well, right? Like, I think once the Clippers established that they're going to go small, and I don't think Gobert was as bad as a lot of people are trying to make it out to be. But I mean, still at some point in an elimination game, especially when things are going the way they are, and Terrence Mann is just camping out in the corners and he's hot, he's got 30 plus points. Like at some point, you have to abort your game plan and go to something else, or else your season's going to be over. Yeah. And they didn't do that. I don't know if they had any other options, because if they would have pulled Gobert out and went small, like the Clippers would have just lived at the rim. Because that was the problem with him being in there. I mean, they were Paul George, Reggie Jackson, they're just blowing by Royce O'Neal and whoever it was off the dribble, and that put Gobert in those situations where he had to make a decision. So I think the Clippers did a lot of things well. I think the Jazz did not. They didn't adjust. And ultimately, like the Clippers, I mean, even without Kawhi, which is kind of surprising to say now after the Jazz were the number 1 seed throughout the season, but like the Clippers just had a better roster. You know what I mean? And it was feast or famine with the 3-pointer with the Jazz, and they made a lot, but their defense, which was a top 5 defensive rating during the regular season, like the Clippers were 119, 131, 120. Like they had no answers, and this is a Kawhi-less Clippers team for a couple of those games. So a lot of that falls on them just not living up to expectations as well.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, because you're right about Rudy. Like, he was food out there, but you also don't have an alternative to that. And if you throw Derek Favors is basically
Derek Favors was even more food.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, like
and even when they were able to take advantage of Gobert, there were still some big possessions out there where he was so good around the basket and teams are so afraid of him that he stopped layups and bunnies and forced them into. I remember there was I think Terrence Mann or something in the lane, little air ball fadeaway jumper because Gobert was there, and then the shot clock violation, or the one where George didn't go up with it and end up kicking it out because Gobert was there. Like, when they were able to get him in the right spots, he was still able to make a big impact defensively. It's just like Cole was saying, the guys were getting beat so badly in the perimeter that their entire defense fell apart. They weren't able to do what they're so good at, which has been funneling ball handlers to Gobert and putting them in a position where you're going to have to challenge this guy if you want to go up and get a shot here, or you're going to have to take a bad shot. So I think everybody's focusing on Gobert, and he, for as good of a player as he is, he needs to find a way to be more impactful, even within what was happening in that series, especially offensively. And so there were some times where he just did blow rotations and that kind of stuff. Forget the one-on-one stuff on the perimeter. There are a couple bad, he just wasn't in the right spots or whatever. Like, he's got to be better in some of that, but it was a total failure from top to bottom on that team. And Gobert is just kind of the easy punching bag, I think.
I mean, I thought Ty Lue pushed the right buttons that series, though. Like that, you talking about I do think that LA played with a little bit of house money in Game 5 because no one expected them to win that game, so they could come out and just be super aggressive and not really have like any of that nervous energy rolling around like we got something to lose in this game. But like it's not like he put those players out on the floor and exploited those matchups accidentally. Like, he specifically said, look, we're going to try to compromise this defense with this specific tactic. And it wasn't like Utah was up 25. It wasn't like it was going well in Game 6, right? Exactly. So, but the fact that he's like, look, this is I thought his interview at halftime was interesting, and coaches don't usually give away the game when they do those interviews. It's very like cookie cutter, but
Ty Lue does.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. His advice was very
he doesn't care.
Like how the Clippers will be successful. He's like, we didn't really freak out that much at halftime. We just said, look, if we're not taking advantage of drives that we can get by these guys on the perimeter, and then we're not trying to make plays to get them rotating. And he said that, I go, he's right. Like, if they stick to that game plan, they're probably going to get some shots to go. And then if they get their confidence going and their rhythm going, Utah might be on tilt at some point in the second half with a big lead because the pressure is all going to be on them to get it back home. And when that started happening, you saw like the Clippers started driving more, started attacking bad closeouts, started getting into the paint, and instead of challenging Rudy, they kick the ball out and they make the whole defense rotate. And eventually you get Rudy on Terrence Mann that he has to rush up to the corner to stop him from hitting a three. And yeah, once that thing started happening, Utah was like, shit. Like, how do we
And
stop
that's where
him?
I think
He scored
that's where I think
80 points in the second half.
And that's where I think Quinn Snyder messed up, though, because like we're saying, like, think about it. Rudy Gobert won Defensive Player of the Year. Why? Because he's a rim protector, not because he can guard dudes on the perimeter.
Right.
Like we saw what happened when he tried to guard Devin Booker on the perimeter. Put him on skates. Like that's just not his deal. That's not why he's a great defensive player. But this series kind of with the Clippers, it came down to like they were going to trust guys like Terrence Mann to be able to hit those shots even later. And when he was hitting them, when he was starting to get up to 30, Quinn Snyder made no adjustment to be like, I'm even going to tell Rudy to go out and finally guard him, or I'll put a new defender in to like make sure these closeouts aren't there. But I guess that's where the game was for me with that. No adjustment. Like once you see it,
right?
Yeah.
Like,
but
if Rudy's guarding that dude's matched up with Rudy. So you got to exploit that on the other end. You got to make him pay for it.
And that's where, again, that's where the three, like you were saying earlier, Cole, like they were going to live and die by that three. And I think they got too focused on that late in that game and didn't want to make it because they were thinking offense at the end of that game. They didn't make that adjustment. So that's how it went.
And Rudy is clearly limited offensively. He doesn't have a lot to his game, but he doesn't get the benefit of playing with, I mean, Conley was hurt, so we can't really, there's a lot to ask of him. But like, he doesn't have the luxury of playing with a Devin Booker even, or, there's nobody out there that's going to drive and throw him a lob or get him the ball in easy spots where
like
he can
a dump
score.
off Westbrook type of point guard.
Everything he scored for the most part was just off offensive rebounds,
his own effort,
and,
right?
Just off of effort and him just being bigger than everyone. But he didn't have. There's no one there to help. Oh, go ahead, Jacob.
Well, and just saying that's what, like, you look at what DeAndre Ayton did in Game 1. He wasn't. They weren't posting. In fact, the only time that he didn't score was when they did post him up and gave him the ball. Yeah. All his points came by punishing them in a different way, by being in the right spots, by running the floor hard and sealing, by crashing the offensive glass. And the Suns very determined to put him in different spots where they had him trailing the play instead of hanging on the dunker spot, where it made it harder for for them to rotate and cover it up. So 3-4 times where you got a guy penetration just dumped it off to Ayton rolling down the lane for a dunk. And like, that's the way. It's not like Ayton is doing any advanced moves offensively. He was taking advantage of the small ball units and the large units when you had Boogie out there, by rolling hard to the rim and playing hard and being in the right spots. That's all Ayton did. And the Clippers didn't have any answer for it. And that's something that the Jazz weren't able to do with Gobert. And that's on him. That's on the team.
Yeah, I'm glad that's a good segue into it. I'm glad you guys both brought that up because it is a personnel thing and a coaching thing. Because I'm sure the Suns were watching Game 6 and they're like, Rudy could feast on this lineup, and we have DeAndre Ayton who can also do the same. If we just get downhill and have him just follow the ball, you know what I mean? Set a screen, follow the ball, and like let Book and Bridges and those guys just like find him for easy ones. Like
he just,
it was like Jacob said, every time he was posted, every time his hardest points were when he actually posted up. But all the other stuff came from just like being in the right spot for dump offs. But that's why I think this series is going to be interesting though, because I want to see the Clippers threw like the kitchen sink at Phoenix in Game 1 in some sense, because I think Ty Lue is trying to figure out at this point what works in a post Kawhi world in terms of matching up with Phoenix. And I like. So Cole, I want to know what you think. Like, which lineups that you saw yesterday do you feel like were really good for the Clippers, not only from Game 1's perspective, but also for something that you think can last throughout a series with Phoenix trying to adjust to it from game to game?
Even before you get into that, though, I think just kind of worth noting that the Marcus Morris injury and the knee soreness, where he was a non-factor in that game. And I think just saw that there's kind of no update on him. It's just he's getting 24/7 treatment on it. It's just kind of soreness, and he only played 21 minutes in that first game. I think that really is a huge blow to the Clippers as currently constructed without Kawhi. Because so if you don't have Kawhi, you don't have Marcus, it's going to be hard to find those lineups that you can play heavy minutes that can take advantage of what the Suns are trying to do. It's kind of similar to Denver, I think, where do the Clippers have enough firepower to keep up?
You get really small. You
guys?
get really small if like with no, they don't have a lot of wins as it is. But
yeah, exactly.
if Kawhi is out and Morris is potentially out, you're looking at a small ball lineup of like Terrence Mann, Paul George, Rondo, Patrick Beverly, and Batum. Like there's no size. There's really not any size. Or else you want to play Patrick Patterson, but I don't think you want to do that. That's going to be the biggest thing going forward. Obviously, I mean Kawhi is the biggest and Chris Paul is the biggest, but we're kind of expecting them to miss at least another game for Chris Paul. Kawhi, who knows? But if Morris is unable to go too, I really have a hard time seeing the Clippers being able to survive more than like 5 games, maybe. Because I mean, at that point, it's just Paul George out there scoring, and whatever Reggie Jackson throws up out of, whatever he throws up and happens to go in, you take that. But there's not a lot of shot creation out there. There's not a lot of dribble penetration, or nobody can create for themselves. So that'll be interesting. And the Morris injury, in my opinion, is like if his knee is just sore, which I dealt with a lot in my career. My knees, I never got hurt on like I fell or something happened. Like his body is just worn out from them playing small so much and him having to box out and lean on Gobert and Boban, and that stuff is taxing on your body. So we might be seeing some results and side effects of that. And if that's the case, that's not going to get any better. That'll be interesting.
And that was the deal. Like so much of them succeeding post Kawhi was because of Paul George, Reggie Jackson, and Marcus Morris. Those guys were doing the heavy lifting. You got Batum, you got some contributions here, there, and Mann, but kind of the bulkier scoring are those 3 players because you can't expect 20 plus out of any of those other guys. Those are the 3 guys that you can go out and feel reasonably confident that these guys are going to go out and give you 20, 30 points in this game. And it's going to be tough with the Suns playing the way they are, even without Chris Paul, to score enough. Because we saw that in the third quarter, it was back and forth. I don't know how many lead changes there were in that point. George hitting big threes, possession after possession. But by the fourth quarter, the Clippers just kind of ran out of gas. They didn't have enough firepower to keep up because the Suns kept going because they've got so many more options. And Booker obviously doing what he did.
That's the other thing too. Like Phoenix, like in game 1, the Clippers were going to have dead legs. So they the fourth quarter was eventually going to wear on them with Phoenix having, even without CP3, having depth and playing at that pace. And I think Booker, like, this is something I mean, Jacob knows I've kind of been a hater throughout the first early years of his career. It's like, I feel like he's kind of like a one-man army. But yesterday was where that mentality kind of shined. Because I think he sensed that at least this is the part of the game where they're going to be like fatigue is going to set in a little bit. And if I can turn it up a level, they won't be able to keep up with this. And it was incredible because LA threw different looks at him, and he basically executed everything that you would need to do in that situation. If they switched it, he still found a way to get around, get downhill, draw a foul, get to the line. If they chased it, he got to his spot. If they doubled him, he got it to the right spot, he got it to the right outlet to where it could be, where they could find the right player in the rotation for the easy 3 or easy layup, whatever it was. Like there was no answer for it. They tried different things, and he still found the way to get around it, or to at least get Phoenix into an optimal position.
The one thing
that was a killer moment for Devin Booker. I was like, you want your best player to be able to put his foot on the gas in a moment like that and put a team away that really, from a roster standpoint, like you feel like Phoenix is better equipped to win the series if LA isn't healthy. So I think him sensing that in that moment and putting the game away essentially is big for Phoenix, because I don't think they're winning a title without that type of mentality from Booker.
Oh yeah.
I think they'll get there, but I don't know. You got to have a killer in those moments. You can't have a guy who's just kind of going through the motions with everybody else. And I think that was like hello, Phoenix might be for real.
Yeah.
Like not just this year, but beyond if he's capable of stuff like that.
And I think we've had a lot of moments like that with Phoenix where they've like we've just noticed throughout this.
Jeremy cutting out again.
Not in this year, but like in years to come.
Yeah,
Oh, that's no good. You got me now?
Yeah,
we got
you're good now.
Cool.
But
All
yeah,
right. But yeah.
No, go ahead,
here's
say that
what-
again. We didn't get any of that.
No, I just thought with Phoenix, it's just like I feel like there's been a ton of moments this year where they've proven themselves as like a legit team. And I think last game playing like what did they play 8-9 deep, like still even without Chris Paul and Devin Booker having double-digit assists is very telling of the team that they are and the team that they actually will be for years, not even just this year.
Yeah, the thing that I really like about Phoenix yesterday was how well Cam Payne played against that first unit with the Clippers. Like, because I you just gotta figure out where the matchups are going to be in the series, and it's like if they do get CP3 back, Cam Payne playing like that with the second unit against the depleted Clippers roster, that's tough. Like as good as the Clippers have been playing with like, with PG playing well and Ty Lue being able to match up and exploit things. Like if Cam Payne is playing at that level on the second unit, like LA is going to get buried at some point. There's going to be rotations where they get caught up in like a -6 or a -8, and those will add up at the end of the game. You know what I mean? If he's playing like that, because he played like a 1 yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, even you saw at the beginning of the fourth quarter, like the game was super exciting. It was very well played by both teams. Paul George had his little run in the third quarter where he hit a bunch of threes, and Devin Booker completely took over. It was tied at the end of the third quarter.
Yeah.
And Paul George sat those first 4 or 5 minutes, whatever it was, and when he came back in the game, it was like 9-10 points, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the Clippers are at. And also, I mean, Devin Booker, like you said, realizing the moment and where he could pick his spots and taking over and whatnot, and kind of realizing that, this point in the game is where I need to put my foot on the gas because they just played 38 hours ago. We got them where we want. We got the crowd with us. He fully took advantage of that. And honestly, if this is how the matchup is going to be going forward, and who knows what's going to happen with Morris, that's honestly, I don't see how that wouldn't be an ongoing thing every game where there's just a run where the Phoenix is just better than whatever the Clippers have on the court, and whether it be they have a size advantage or they're quicker or whatever it is, whatever the personnel is, like there's just going to be those moments in these games as long as this is before Chris Paul even comes back, which is a whole nother ball game. So
yeah, that's where I agree with you. I think best versus best, it's like it can be even.
It's pretty even.
But I think once, I mean, that's without Kawhi, but like best versus best, if Kawhi doesn't play, is still pretty even, I think, in my opinion. I think the Clippers can hang, but it's when Phoenix's second unit starts mixing into the rotations and they start mixing and matching that way that it's going to get that Phoenix is going to put enough runs together to make the difference in the end of the game. Because they won by 6, but those runs that Phoenix put together when the Clippers were trying to get guys rest, that made the difference. Like that's why that's why LA was chasing the game in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, and where Clippers are really in trouble without Kawhi is like one thing we didn't really see is Paul George on Devin Booker. Right. Like it was almost Terrence Mann, Pat Beverly the whole time, and that's just not going to work at this point in Booker's career. Those guys are not going to be able to hold him down for 4 games in a 7-game series. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
George and Kawhi are the guys on the roster that are equipped to be able to do that, but with Kawhi out of the mix, that's one less guy to kind of take on that assignment. But then on the other end, that's one less guy to carry the load offensively. So like George can't both be the primary defender on Booker and be your number 1 option on offense. And that's kind of what they need at this point. Yeah, it's just not like guys can't do that, especially with the way that Booker's playing right now. So that is kind of one adjustment that the Clippers can make. But if Morris is limited or not playing at all, I don't know where you go to on offense to allow George to be able to take a crack at Booker and try to slow him down for more than a couple possessions here and there.
Mm-hmm. Let's close out with the Eastern Conference Finals matchup. We got Milwaukee. We don't really need to dissect Brooklyn because I feel like that story is pretty. They weren't 100%.
Yeah,
they would have got by Milwaukee. So we got the Bucks versus the Hawks. I think a matchup that's probably pretty. So I mean, I thought Milwaukee could get here until I saw the start of the Brooklyn series. Then I was less sure, but they are here, and I do still kind of like how they're constructed, and I like how they match up in this series with Atlanta because Atlanta likes to shoot the three, and that's kind of how they live or die. Milwaukee's similar on offense, except they have Giannis who can create at the rim. But man, if Middleton plays like he did just in closing moments, because I know his shooting numbers aren't great, they're not the most efficient in the world, but if he can close games like he did routinely, like
he's their closer.
Yeah.
If
they acknowledge that he's their closer, they'll be fine. They'll win. Like I actually like them. I maybe even like them to win the whole thing, but sometimes they get stuck. Like, all right, who should be initiating offense late game situation at this point? So I think if they live with Middleton doing that in the fourth quarter and down the stretch, they'll be good. But I don't know. How does Atlanta have enough to beat Milwaukee in this series? Can they keep it rolling one more time?
No,
I don't think so.
Not. I mean, at least not on paper, and not from what we've seen through these playoffs. But I mean, you could argue that Philly had just as an impressive of a roster as Milwaukee did in terms of competing for a championship, in terms of size, like Ben Simmons and Embiid, Tobias, that kind of rivals Milwaukee. And I mean, whether that's just a poor coaching or some mental missteps here and there from Philly, like Atlanta, they figured it out. I mean, that points a lot to Coach McMillan. I don't really trust Mike Budenholzer as I don't really trust him that much to make an in-series adjustment. I think they got really fortunate that obviously Brooklyn dealt with a bunch of injuries and whatnot. But like Milwaukee's not really playing well, and I mean I don't know who's going to match up with Giannis on Atlanta. Some of the matchups are going to be kind of funky and kind of weird. But like this is a cop-out answer, but like almost like the Western Conference Finals, like at this point of the playoffs, it's like I don't even know. Like a bunch of strange things have happened to lead us here, and like a lot of stuff is just unpredictable. So like Milwaukee is most likely the favorites, and like they should be. But like, will I be surprised if this goes 7 or if Atlanta figures something out? Absolutely not. That's an easy way of saying I don't know.
So from a matchup standpoint, what you're saying is like it feels like Milwaukee should have an easy time, but we've also had some bizarro NBA stuff happen, so it might happen again. I think that's
Milwaukee should have an easy time, but Milwaukee hasn't had an easy time.
I know,
or at least not last round.
I like that. That's a good bet hedge. I think that's fine.
I think the one thing, because I was in an argument earlier that I was like, yeah, Drew Holiday's gonna lock up Trae Young, and then one of my friends said to me, he was like, yeah, but what if Drew Holiday gets 2 early fouls?
Boom.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. Well, the other thing is like, if Drew gets hurt, like, how does that change Milwaukee's how they're structured to stop Trae?
Right.
So if Trae just finds himself on a stupid heater, sorry, we're trying to talk through Jordan's Wi-Fi real quick, but like Trae, like the Game 7 against Philly, Trae was horrible, and they were playing from the lead the whole time, and in that game. So you knew Philly was in trouble. You're like, all right, Philly's in trouble now because Trae's off and it's still up for grabs. Yeah. So if he gets a stretch where he, scores 7 or 10 in about a 2-minute stretch, Philly's going to be chasing the game the rest of the way. And that's what happened.
Yeah. And like Milwaukee scrapes by, that doesn't mean their weaknesses are going away. Like they're still very clearly apparent there on tape for Nate McMillan to go back and watch and to try to exploit. So, like, just because Durant happened to step on the line on that shot at the end of regulation doesn't mean that Milwaukee is suddenly going to go back to being the juggernaut that they were during the regular season. Like, the weaknesses that they were struggling with are still there, and Atlanta's going to try to take advantage of those. So, what answer does Mike Budenholzer have for that? And that definitely is not something that I feel comfortable with if I'm a Milwaukee fan, just based on what he's shown so far throughout his entire playoff career as a head coach.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see kind of they're going to need Drew Holiday to play much better than he did in that game and even in that series. They're going to need him to be big. Like if Trae Young absolutely dominates that point guard matchup, then Milwaukee's going to be in trouble no matter what Giannis does, I think. So they're going to need their best players to play well in order to their roster is much better, but they need their guys to play like who they were during the regular season, who they've been throughout their career in order for that to actually play out on the court.
Yeah, just one more closing note on this. Like, I mean, I've talked about this before, and Jordan, this might sting a little, but like, I'm really mad when moments like potentially epic, historic moments in sports get ruined by just something. So when the Giants beat the Patriots to stop the undefeated season in the Super Bowl after they'd already beaten them like late in the regular season, that was like a bummer moment for me. KD stepping on the line to make that a 2 and not a 3 ruined what I think, in my opinion, one of the most epic like series closer shots ever. Because what he did to even give Brooklyn a chance in that series with how injured they were was all time. And I mean like all time MJ great stuff, like GOAT stuff. And the fact that he was stepping on the line for that ridiculous shot makes me mad. Because I'm like, I think the NBA, like, so mad that the NBA should like override it.
If I was a ref,
like, we're talking about this.
I would have said
like his shoe was this much over. Like that's ball game. That was ridiculous. That shot.
Too bad Marv Albert wasn't making the calls there.
I know, right?
He called it a 3
the whole time. Yeah.
Who's calling that game?
Man, and then they had to go to overtime, and he already played like he was exhausted. Like
See, that's what makes it even worse is the air ball at the end of overtime was essentially the exact same shot as the one to send it to overtime. Right down to the foot on the line, the spin back, the fade away. He just happened to airball that one instead of swish it.
Shows you how tired you can get in 5 minutes of NBA basketball.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Especially when you play the previous 48.
Yeah.
Especially when
the 48 before that.
When you go to the bench in between fourth and overtime and sit, and your body tightens up and get stiff. Like that's tough.
That's why James Harden couldn't sit, right? Because like if he had sat at all during any of those games, that hammy would have locked back up and he would have been done. Yeah.
Where did that? Okay.
For my man James.
Where did they go from here? Like I know this is not like a off-season type of thing that we're doing, but like they had a bunch of guys on some Aldridge, Blake, like they had a few guys, important guys on little mini contracts, minimum contracts. Like, are those guys coming back? Do you want to bring those type of guys back? You know what I mean?
Obviously, Aldridge had to retire. I think Blake probably would be interested in coming back, and the way that he played, I think they'd like to have him back. We're already seeing Dinwiddie is opting out of his deal, so he's going to be a free agent.
Is DeAndre a free agent too, or is he?
He's either free agent or one more year. I'm hopefully he's a free agent for their sake, and they can clear the cap space. They've done the favor for Durant to make him signing there happen. So like DeAndre, you can go ahead and leave now.
I mean, honestly, and Jordan knows this because I was talking trash then they opened the season with the Celtics or whatever, and I was like, Brooklyn's gonna be like, no one's really like on this squad yet. They kind of like think they're too thin from a bench standpoint, and defense, they don't have any defense. But I don't know. The way I saw like Durant just carry that squad to the point where I'm like, they basically are in the conference finals because he thought he was shooting a 3. I think that as long as they get Harden and or Kyrie healthy with KD playing at that level, I don't care what they have around them.
Oh yeah, they'll be fine.
I think they'll be fine. I think they'll be
fine as long as Joe Harris remembers how to shoot in the postseason.
That'll be helpful, right? Yeah.
So
is decent consecutive seasons or 3 seasons in a row where he's just kind of weird in the playoffs?
Seriously.
I don't remember I don't remember
last year. Yeah. But the year before he wasn't very good either.
Yeah, because he had a chance. He had that wide open 3 there late in that game. Like that was ball game if he knocks that down. Nobody within 10 feet of him.
And he was shooting lights out against who's their first round opponent against Boston.
I'm gonna come to Joe Harris's side to back him up here. He needs Kyrie. He's only good with Kyrie. He needs Kyrie to find him.
That's a rare thing.
He needs Kyrie to find. I don't know why. this is just I'm going on a whim here. I have no stats to back this up or anything, but I'm just like, I saw him play in that first round, and I was like, wow, Joe Harris is like the new elite shooter. Like he's that new JJ Redick mold, old Ray Allen mold. Like that's what he is now in the first round, right? And then so I don't know if something was missing. I don't know if him and Kyrie are boys. He was really sad when his ankle happened. I don't know, but like,
can they afford Doug? Can they afford Doug's a free agent? Can they afford Doug?
There's no way. Doug was killing it this year.
Yeah, no.
He was killing it. I know, but what if Doug just wants a ring? Like, what if he just wants?
I don't think Doug's at that point in his career. He's still continuing to establish himself.
Just think about Doug playing off Kyrie and KD. I'm like, dude, that's an easy 30, right? If you give Doug the shots that Joe Harris got, just put Doug and Joe Harris's shots, like the shot quality that he got, like that's money, right?
Joe Harris is an elite shooter and has been even before those guys got there. So like, it's not like he's a scrub that is only.
No, we've scrubbed him out. We just did that. We scrubbed him out already.
So it's not like Doug would not shoot 53% from three on the shots that Joe Harris is getting. Like Joe Harris deserves some credit. Again, it's kind of the same thing with Simmons. We can't completely forget who he is as a player because of one bad postseason series. He's just got to not let that happen again. They need to have some help, and then Brooklyn will be fine.
How many postseason series before you can scrub out a player? How many? What's the number?
Good question.
So that people ask us about Rudy. Like, how many postseasons in a row does Rudy have to get targeted like that before it's like a problem or like a trend?
Question.
Well, and I think again, but we talked about with Rudy, it's not even as much like if it's individually. Like Joe Harris, that was a case of him individually just completely failing. He was still getting looks.
True.
I think there's a lot more factors.
The Knicks. Like everybody gets excited. Everybody gets excited when the Knicks are good, and I've already lived through this. I know what happens when the Knicks are good. They lose. It happens when the Knicks are good. Like Trae Young silencing MSG. That's tradition for me. I've seen that before. Like I know what happens when those dudes go into MSG and MSG starts talking to them, like Reggie, MJ, like LeBron. Name them. Like everybody goes into MSG and closes out the Knicks. That's what happens. MSG is for other people. Like it's not for the Knicks. It's for other players to be legends. So like that's what I mean. Like how many does it take before it's a trend or whatever? All right. Well, we'll see if we can. The good thing is we'll have one of Cole or Jacob in a good mood for the NBA Finals. So like that's at least good though. So
when are we getting Jordan's rant? We ran out of time last. Yeah, we did. Unless you guys already did an episode.
We don't have to talk.
No, it's Bill.
They signed Al Horford, and I don't want to say anything more, so, like,
it did.
Like the rant got way longer. We're just gonna have to do like
a full episode.
You guys let me talk about all the problems with the Boston Celtics for 2 hours and not interject. Like that's gonna have to be an episode because that's where we're at here in Boston now. So
we'll drop that on like a random Wednesday or like Jordan's Boston Celtics
in like the wee hours of the night. We'll get a huge case of Sammy Adams. And we'll just
3 a.m.
Let's give President Brad Stevens too. Yeah, let's give President Brad Stevens a chance to make a few more moves to really set Jordan off, and then kind of just review the whole thing.
Yeah, he's got a coach to hire. I bet Jordan will be set off by then.
There we go.
All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Check out Jacob's work at Hell Varsity. Go to Scurry. Do you have a website up for Scurry Hoops yet? Where's your gear at, Jordan?
Scurry Hoops is just the gear right now. We're working on getting the writing from Sneaker Reporter to put onto a link there, but still sneakerreporter.com.
Yeah, check out get Jordan's gear. Start buying some of that merch, and then check out Cole's work. I think you're still at the Athletic, right? Are you the CEO of the Undefeated yet, or what's going on right now?
That doesn't even.
It's only been a week, but
you don't even get a response for that.
Yeah, check out Cole's work at the Athletic. He's doing a great job. He's got some. Are you going to be on any of those Clippers podcasts too? 213.
Yeah, a little bit later today, a couple hours.
All right, cool. Yeah, follow Cole's work. If you're not following him on Twitter, it's at Cole Hoops, right?
Yep.
Yeah, check him out, follow all his work. He covers the Aces, covers the Clippers. He's a name to learn in the game, people.
Shout out to Lucas and Robin at 213 Hoops.
Yeah, that's what I like. I like because Jacob cut his teeth like at Bright Side of the Sun, and like Cole's kind of coming up doing the same kind of thing. So it's like good little synergy going on here.
Well, and I know, like I actually met Lucas. He kind of drove across the country at one point, so I met him like while he was stopping through Omaha. So I've known him for a few years. So once I saw that, like he came actually DM me, told me, hey, Cole Huff actually applied to be right here. I was like, oh sweet, that's awesome.
So you plugged
He'd be
me,
awesome for you guys.
basically. You plugged me.
Yeah.
Okay, I appreciate that. Learn something new every day. So I wouldn't have this position with the Athletic because I wouldn't have this position at 213 Hoops if it weren't for Jacob.
There you go. All
Crazy.
right.
Yeah, we can we'll just say it that way.
And he'll trade you that for a Suns trip to the finals.
There we
As long
go.
as he doesn't,
Cashing in the
as long as he
favors all
doesn't
these
beat
years
anybody
later.
up. Just don't beat anyone up and say Suns in 4.
I've never beat anybody up in my life, so I don't think we're in danger there.
Very good. All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. We'll hit you up in a week or so with some new content. So thanks for tuning in to Scurry and the Scrub episode, I don't know, 50 or something. Later. Oh, whoops.
Whoops.